describe the devastation happening right now, the need to run, but seemingly nowhere to go. I want to bring in Hussain Abdul-Hussain tonight, research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Hussain, if Gazans can't leave, how long is it reasonable to keep 2 million people pent up in this handful of square miles in southern Gaza while Israel roots out Hamas in the north?
Well, I think as long as we can have safe zones for the Gazans, whether it's in the south or in the north, that should work. The point is to get these civilians out of the or away from the military theater, and if we can do this, I think this will do the job. There's no reason to have them cross the border all the way into Egypt, or to have them go to Jordan, which is, there's no border with Jordan anyway. I don't see how that can happen. But the point here is that we want to protect as much civilian lives as possible, and I think what Israel is doing makes sense. You ask people to move south. Once you're done, people can go back to wherever they came from.
So we have Egypt and Jordan saying our doors are closed. Who else, if anyone, in close proximity could step up?
Well, there's nowhere else for these people to go. I mean, unless Israel allows the UN to construct some sort of temporary refugee camp. But this looks bad in terms of politics and diplomacy, so I don't think this is an option. So the only option that we have here is just to make sure that to keep these people away from the war zone. Now, what Hamas has been doing is that instead of them coming out of Gaza and fighting Israel like they declared, because according to Hamas, this is a military operation and it has a name. It's called the Al-Aqsa Flood, and this is supposed to be an operation that Hamas started against Israel. So if Hamas wants to fight Israel, it would be really wise for them to step out of civilian neighborhoods and fight the fight. Instead, what happens is that Hamas hides within Gaza City, which is a very dense and populous city. Mm-hmm. And the people, the civilians, end up protecting these Hamas guys who claim to be the ones who are protecting the civilians.
So help us understand, does the U.S. have any power with regional leaders? They stood by as El-Sisi took power, despite the Muslim Brotherhood, winning this election there. The U.S. has stood by Jordan's monarchy, despite some discontent among citizens there. Can President Biden maybe call in some favors and say, I know you don't want to do this, but?
Well, at this point, I don't see any favors working. What really looks like mind-boggling to me is that most of these governments really hate the Islamist Hamas, including the Palestinian Authority. So in the year 2007, the way how Hamas took over the Gaza Strip was that they executed a coup in which they killed 450 Palestinians who belong to the Palestinian Authority. So Hamas's history of massacre is old, goes back at least a decade. And these Islamist groups, these militias who are allied with Iran, are really not really welcome among these Arab governments. Now, what's happening is that these Arab governments have suddenly decided to be populist, while I think deep down they enjoy watching Israel taking out their enemy, Islamist Hamas, the militia that's allied with Iran. So I think there's a double face going on here, unfortunately.
So if it's basically a wall around Gaza at this moment, as it sounds there, Hussain, is there a red line for the U.S. and for the UN and the rest of the world on the humanitarian crisis to where they say it cannot pass this?
Well, unfortunately, October 7 showed that this fence does not really protect Israel and separate it from the Hamas terrorist organization as it should be. And I think this is the point that convinced Israel and convinced Washington and European capitals that it is time for Israel to take Hamas out, because Hamas forms an existential threat to the state of Israel. So while this happens, I think this is hard to execute if you have 2 million people. There's no easy way to handle this. So what Secretary Blinken has been doing is that he's been trying to come to an agreement between all these countries, Egypt, Jordan, and to get some sort of safe zones and aid and food to these desperate Gazans.
Hussain Abdul-Hussain with Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you.